Hello, hello, hello. My name is Rabbi Zevi Wineberg. I want to share with you my story, and I'm so glad that you are here. My story begins with, of course, my birth. Wonderful parents. I was born in a Chabad family in Kansas City, Missouri. My parents are shluchim. They are messengers of the Lubavitcher Rebbe to bring light, love, and Torah and mitzvahs to the community, which they have very successfully done. Growing up in Chabad, I think I was very educated well, and I believed very much in Judaism and believed in the Rebbe. In fact, I believed that the Rebbe was Mashiach. It was sort of a basic given. If Mashiach is coming, he was the obvious candidate, and it wasn't something that was kind of pushed down anyone's throat. It was just kind of a given. If you believed in Mashiach, it was obvious that he was going to be the one. And then Gimel Tammuz, the passing of the Rebbe, occurred, and that threw me into a major crisis of faith. Now, truth be told, faith is always in crisis, because until you really adopt the faith as your own, you desire the faith, your faith is in crisis. Because if there's a crisis of faith, you may not have that much faith. And so crises of faith are good because they force us to seek the truth. And so I began on a journey, because at that moment I thought that what I had known to be true was not true. I began on a journey of seeking the truth, and certainly I looked into the secular world. I lived a bit like that for a while, and I saw that that was not true. It's just a rat race. Well, a rat race can't be the truth. So I decided I'd look a little bit into what is the Reform and Conservative movement. I, in fact, was still part of the Chabad movement. I was, in fact, what's called a shliach. I was studying in a yeshiva and organizing Chabad programs. And in fact, I organized it was called a Beis Medrash program, where people get together and they study Torah. And my partner was a Reform rabbi, so I asked him to give me books on the Reform movement. So it turns out the Reform movement has one law, only one law, and that is that any rabbi can say whatever they want, which that's like saying that I'm making a religion, that anybody that is in charge of the religion anywhere in the world, people don't know this, but they're allowed to say whatever they want, which is bizarre to say the least. Well, conservative turns out to be a little bit more traditional. It was made by American Jews who basically came from more traditional backgrounds, and they didn't like the Reform. But effectively, once you break truth, once you don't have a law, there is no end to it. And that's why conservative really is a step away from Reform, even though they wouldn't like to hear that. But bottom line is, if you have no red lines, doesn't matter if your red line is here or your red line is here. If you don't have the red line, it's going to shift pretty quickly, as we see. Well, that's not the truth. I certainly knew a little bit of Aristotle and Plato, and that's not the truth. I mean, it's just a bit of philosophy, like a little science. That's not truth. It just happens to be. And so, unfortunately, I was in a vacuum. I didn't see the truth. I didn't know what the truth was. And I wasn't a believer in God at that stage. But I certainly was, interested in knowing what the truth was. I got married, and thank God, I would say through two events, I came to faith in God. The first was my wife, because she was a believer, and a real believer, a very smart woman. And it was just one incident, I'm not going into all the details, but where I saw that her faith was very real. It wasn't just something like she's praying this. Was a knowledge, and that knowledge, interestingly, was predicted by the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, that before the Mashiach would come, the women would give faith to the men. And it was that knowledge which made me aware of this is like real. But that was sort of an awareness, which was good. But ultimately, this life is a journey to discovery, and God made me discover Him in a very deep way. When I really, quite remarkably, I chanced upon a very, very important work, which I recommend to all people. It's called Duties of the Heart, and it's written by Rabbeinu Bechaya, and basically there's what's called the Gateway to Trust. And if you read the Gateway to Trust, you begin to know that God is there for you. He shows you from your mother's milk all these miracles that occurred. He brings God basically the miracles of life and the miracles of your existence, and you realize that there's a loving God. And that was a high. I wasn't like on a high for a year, which happens to many people, and I felt very, very, I had great insights, and I became a rabbi of a community, which was a good thing because I was in a big high, so I was able to share that passion. But eventually, as the Baal Shem Tov says, you discover, and there's this high, but then God takes away that high, and now you have to rediscover. And I really had to integrate, I would say that's a good word, integrate reality, because when you're on a high, it's all good. But when you're in the real world, it's not all good. So you have to integrate your faith and reality and put them together. And since then, I would say I've been very fortunate. My journey has been a journey of growth. I've discovered one of the things that were most amazing to me is the last 4 years of the Rebbe's teachings, extraordinary dimensions of Judaism and mysticism that has been revealed. And I have, of course, this blog, Kabbalah Wisdom, academyoflife.org. And I really hope that you're going to join me. If you have a journey of return, please join me on this journey. And please share your story, because your story will inspire, hopefully, millions of others to take a similar trip.